I guess, look, after watching both episodes, I would describe What If Season 3 so far as fine. It's like fine. And but I think that, on the heels of that, I'm actually glad that this is the last season of this show. And I'm glad that this show is going away. I don't think this current show and the way it's designed, the way it's animated, all of that stuff, I don't think it's right for what Marvel wants to project going forward. This feels like in a lot of ways, What If to me feels like it puts some of the worst parts of Marvel on full display. And unfortunately, because it doesn't have, I think, a lot of the best parts of Marvel to sort of lift it up, it becomes a show that just fatigues even its most hardcore people. And what do I mean by that? I think it's overly connected. Like the idea of the guy from Eternals messing with Agatha. I mean, in one way that kind of makes sense because Agatha got delayed for years, so Agatha kind of came out a little bit more recently than was originally intended. But what was Eternals, like 3 years ago? How is that cool? Like I'm sorry, like how is that cool that 3 years later we get a Kingo episode? And I think it shows that Marvel's insistence on wanting these things to connect and really wanting to sort of bolster its own movies and stuff rather than exploring the full possibilities of the actual multiverse. It doesn't feel good. You know what I mean? Like it just doesn't feel good to me. It's not exciting. It's certainly not exciting enough, I think, to get me into the show. The other thing is, I feel like this is representative of a big problem that I've personally had with Marvel, especially in Phase 4. This was actually something they did even during the Infinity Saga, although I think it was more appropriate then. And this is the idea of like piecemealing stuff out and being so addicted to your own supply, essentially. What If had a mandate that every episode had to connect to another actual MCU movie or show? Like, they can't do a bunch of X-Men and whatnot because we haven't had a bunch of X-Men in the MCU. Right? Like, they can't do Spider-Verse stuff because, first of all, that's Sony, but also, like, we haven't done that in the MCU. They just want to do what if Elseworld stories of stuff that they have already do. And that charm has completely worn off for me. Like, I just don't care. Especially when you consider the past 4 years and how Marvel obviously knows they've had somewhat of a downslide, and the audience is not responding the same way that they once did. So it's a confluence of many different issues and blemishes on Marvel's brand, and then it just kind of like puts that stuff on full display. Some of the emotional beats still work just because I have such a connection to certain characters here, but a lot of it just feels flat and unearned. So, I guess it's fine, right? Like, I'll continue to watch the rest of it. I would imagine, just like the other seasons, there's going to be a few that are bangers, and then a lot that just feel like fluff and whatever. Now, one thing I will say is that there are some people out there that are hinting that the later episodes of this season of What If will have an impact and maybe prove some theories that people have about, like, RDJ Doctor Doom and Doomsday and the multiverse. They will prove some of those theories correct. That sounds exciting. That sounds cool, and I'm going to watch them, and if there's good ideas there, I'll incorporate them into my theory crafting, etc., etc. But by and large, man, I don't think What If is it. Like, they're not really cooking, bro. They're not really pouring on the sauce. It feels so bland to me. We need some spice. We need some sauce. You know? So I can't even necessarily recommend What If. And from what I've heard, this might be the worst season they've done so far. Just if this is coming from people that have seen the future episodes and whatnot, right? So, sort of a milquetoast, middle of the road review of the show, and I think that's just because that's really how I feel about it. I'm kind of take it or leave it. I will watch it because I always do my homework, but I can't really recommend it to other people, man. It doesn't really feel like you put this show up against something like X-Men 97. It's an embarrassing comparison. Also doesn't necessarily bode well for the rest of these animated shows coming out from Marvel Studios. I don't know what it is exactly, but they have not really nailed that outside of X-Men 97 yet. And I will say one last thing on it. I don't want to dogpile on the show. I don't want to get too crazy, but I'll tell you this. So the first episode of What If starts off with like a show within a show. So there's a show that one of the characters is watching, and it has a completely different animation style. It's hand-drawn, looks more old school. I literally prefer that hand-drawn, animated, short thing that was just a little tease. I literally prefer that to the stiff, weird animation style that is presented in What If. Sometimes What If can look really good. Most of the time, it looks ridiculous. It's not high quality animation. The writing is held back by Marvel mandates. It doesn't fully explore the multiverse because it just wants to bolster other MCU projects. It exposes all of Marvel's flaws, and I think that's actually bad for the brand. So, not great. Overall, when it comes to What If Season 3, it's not great.